Hi, I'm Julian from IXL with Julian. In this video, I'd like to cover the topic of how to find the opposite of an integer. We'll cover what integers are, how to find the opposite of an integer. We'll do 3 questions on the board, 2 questions on IXL. I will link 2 videos on integers at the end of this video, and then we'll come back here for a recap of today's lesson. But before we do start, I just want to thank you guys for 32 subscribers. And yeah, now let's go to the video. Now we're on the board, but before we do start with our examples, I just want to talk to you about 2 things. One thing being what an integer is, and the other being how to find the opposite of an integer. Now, an integer is a positive or negative whole number, and it can also be 0. Now, for how you do find the opposite of an integer, well, what you're going to want to do is multiply the integer by -1. Now let's get into some examples, and I will show you more about this. So, our first example, find the opposite of -3. So to find the opposite of -3, as I said before, we're going to multiply, and notice how I'm using a dot rather than an X. And then in brackets, I'm going to put -1. And all of this is just to make it look better and more organized. So, -3 times -1 gives us 3. A good way to remember this is if there's an even number of negative signs, you have a positive number, because as you can see, I have 2 here, and if we extracted them and put them together, an addition symbol is practically just 2 subtraction signs. Now, let's move on to our second example, which is to find the opposite of 5. How to find the opposite of 5? Again, let's multiply by -1. And our answer for that would be -5. Now for our third and final question on the board, until we go into IXL, is find the opposite of 7. So 7 times -1 times -1, since we do have a 2-parter, since we have 2 opposites. Now, we're going to do this in 3 steps. So, our first step being this one. Our second step being doing 7 times, and then since we do have 2 negative symbols, we do put them together, we get a positive, so we're just multiplying by +1, and our third step being it equals 7. There we are. Now to IXL for some more examples. Now we're in IXL, and I'd just like to do a couple of questions. Our first question, what number is the opposite of -3? But before we do that, it asks us to graph -3 on the number line. So we'll find -3 on the number line, and then to find the opposite of -3, there are 2 methods. One being, since it is -3, that means it's 3 away from 0 in the negative direction, which means it would just be 3 in the positive direction, which would get us to 3. Or we can use the strategy I shared with you on the board, where you multiply by -1, and you get the answer. Not 4. What am I talking about? It's +3. Okay. Now, we know that the opposite of -3 is 3. We've seen 2 ways to see this, and we submit. Now we need to graph 3 on the number line. So let's graph it on the number line. It's right here. Again, it is 3 away from 0, since the number is 3. So it should also be 3 away from 0 in the negative direction. which means the opposite of 3 is negative. Now, back to the video. Welcome back. In this video, we covered what integers are, how to find the opposite of integers. We did 3 questions on the board, 2 questions in IXL, and right here I will link 2 videos on integers. If you did happen to enjoy this video, please consider subscribing, as it helps out a ton and pushes these educational kinds of videos out to a larger audience. Thanks! Bye!